Structural racism impacts the socio-emotional well-being of Black, Indigenous people of color. There are real stressors, real feelings, real things connected to alienation that contribute to depression and anxiety that are a result of institutional racism. In discussing the impact of structural racism on people of color, it's important to start the conversation with emotional labor. Emotional labor is a term coined by sociologist Arlie Hochschild in her famous book, The Managed Heart. So one of the things that's identified is that emotional labor occurs when employees introduce or suppress emotions in order to portray themselves in a certain light. She gives two important aspects that are related to the management of one's emotions. They're not necessarily related to work, but in this context, we're going to use them as related to work because we're talking about an institution. So one is deep acting. Deep acting is where a person works to place his or her private emotions aside into one that is in line with what is socially accepted in that given situation. So, for example, if a boss, let's say if it's a woman, a boss comes to a woman and says something like, I really think that you'd be happier if you wore your skirt shorter or something like that. Now, in that particular environment, that woman might take an assessment of what might happen if she acts in resistance to her boss. And she might take those emotions and she might set those aside and do what she might believe is socially acceptable to him or to that environment in that situation. And her response may be something along the lines of giggling because he feels like he has made a joke, right? So that is to say that deep acting doesn't change how you privately feel. It just changes how you publicly perform. Another aspect that she points out is surface acting. Surface acting is where a person puts on a face essentially and places his or her outward emotions and appearance in line again with what is socially expected or acceptable in certain situations. In other words, surface acting changes your public display